Hello, this is Frank Mandolini of the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this interview with Tristen Law of the Tristen Law Show. And I must remind you to rate this show 5 stars on Apple Podcast and leave a thumbs up on YouTube. Thank you so much. Bye.
Tris, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on this podcast. It's been a long time coming, my friend. Long time coming, and you are the one between us that is not only a podcaster but also a quite experienced wrestler. Am I right?
I think you're right. I would say that you would have had to Google me to figure that out, but you probably already knew because we know each other. You're one of the people, Frank, and thanks for having me here on the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. You're one of the people that I always say that I've never met you in real life, but I feel like we're like friends. Like if you lived in America or if I lived in Italy, I'd call you and say, "Hey, bro, you want to meet up for dinner and just hang out and talk junk?" And we've never met each other. It's only because of our mutual friend Dave from Dave Knows Wrestling on YouTube.
Yeah. I was about to bring him up, but I think the first time we got in touch was because you've heard the interview you did with me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that was last May, almost a year to this day.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, like 10 months ago. That's
Yes.
crazy. That's crazy how time flies. That is crazy. What's your relationship with Dave? How did you met him? Was through wrestling or you knew him like even before?
So just like I meet everybody else in my life, I met Dave by accident. Okay. Dave was one of the people that was at the school when I used to do a previous project. The previous project was called Royal Ramble Radio. It was me and another gentleman. We discussed and dissected the world of pro wrestling, and we did it for about 2 hours. We were in a radio studio in a school. In that school was where Dave taught, and he teaches broadcast, and we befriended each other because Dave, if you don't know Dave personally, Dave is a very opinionated guy. And if you don't understand what I mean, ask him why Shawn Michaels is his favorite wrestler of all time. And Dave would come by, and Dave would definitely give advice, and I would soak it up like a sponge because I want to be a broadcaster, or wanted to be a broadcaster, but I didn't have the experience or the know-how. So he would take his time with me for free when I could be a student in that school. And what he would do is that he would give me like little tips on how to become a better broadcaster. And because of that, we befriended each other. Like I love Dave to death. And Dave is somebody who, if I have a crazy idea, when it's something that comes to broadcasting or YouTubing or something, I call him to bounce the idea off of him. And sometimes he goes, "That's a really good idea." And sometimes he goes, "That idea is stupid." And I appreciate that because sometimes it's great to have somebody in your corner to say, "Hey, that is not really a good idea. Have you thought about it like this?" That's my relationship with Dave.
Well, that's a great relationship to have. Do you also worked with him within the wrestling realm? Like I don't know, he works for Catalyst Wrestling, right? You maybe I don't know if you wrestled there as well.
I haven't had the opportunity to wrestle for Catalyst Wrestling, formerly known as Capital Pro Wrestling, Capital Wrestling. But if it wasn't for the pandemic, I honestly believe that opportunity would have surfaced itself. But I hope it's somebody. I hope that Catalyst is an organization that I can work with later on down the line. It's something I'm looking forward to doing down the line.
Okay, cool. But let's stop talking about Dave because this isn't an interview about Dave. There is a whole episode about him. It's episode number 22 of this wonderful podcast that you're listening. So we should start, the typical wrestling question, the typical wrestling podcast question, something that I normally never do, but this time I feel it's so interesting because I know you have you have had a great teacher in your wrestling career. So tell me a little bit about your wrestling career. How did it started?
So I always wanted to be a professional wrestler, always. When I was a kid, there's a couple things I want to be. I want to be a bus driver in New York City. I want to drive the train in New York City. I want to open the doors as a conductor in the New York City subway. And I want to be a police officer, but I want to be a pro wrestler. And I thought that in order for you to be a pro wrestler, you got to go to college and they got to draft you. just like they do for other professional sports. But, we know that that's not how it works. It works that way, but it's probably less than 1%. Maybe less than 0.5% of all the wrestlers in pro wrestling have been drafted directly out of college. So we're going to fast forward all the way to when I moved to Florida. We moved to Florida, and I lived in Orlando. And at that time, I was no longer in love with wrestling. And the reason why I wasn't in love with wrestling anymore was because I wasn't able to keep up with it, because we moved down to Florida and we wanted to be ritzy and we wanted to get satellite television. Great. So we got satellite television, but every single day at the same time, it wouldn't work. So I had to find something else to do. So what I would do, Frank, is that I would go work. I would go hang out with women and not focus on wrestling, right? Great. That's what every 18, 19-year-old does, right? Great.
Yeah. I know the story. I know the story. I've been there.
Oh, yeah? You've been there too?
Yeah. Not in wrestling, but yeah.
So I was working at Universal Orlando, and one of my coworkers, his name is Ed, he came to me and said, "Hey, look, I heard that you like wrestling. You should come and watch wrestling in the sound stages at Soundstage 21. Man, I'm not really into wrestling anymore. I appreciate it." He goes, "I think you'd really like it. They have people there that were in the WWE. Oh, well, I'm tired." He goes, "But he eventually kept trying to convince me, and he was rebutting all of my denial statements to why I couldn't go." So the last one I hit him with, Frank, was, "Well, I don't have any money." And he said it's free.
It's free. Yeah.
So I ended up going, and it was TNA, and I think it was their first pay-per-view, which was Victory Road in maybe 2004 or 5 or something like that. And if anybody wants to fact check me, it was the pay-per-view where Macho Man Randy Savage made his debut at Impact at TNA.
Oh man, that was one of the first pay-per-view of TNA that I ever saw at that time, because for I don't know whichever reason TNA was on Italian television at that time. So not WWE but TNA. So yeah. Sorry if I interrupted. Go on.
You don't interrupt me at all. It's your show. Hey, I'm just here. But I went to that show not as a full-fledged wrestling fan. On the scale of not a wrestling fan to 10, I was more of a 2. All right. I didn't really keep up with it. I wasn't concerned about it. It was just something that happened. And I remember seeing Macho Man come out and standing on the bleachers, just screaming. Bro, I had no voice. No voice. The next day, they taped Impact, usually on Mondays and Tuesdays. They taped Impact Wrestling. And I said, "Hey, bro, are you going?" He goes, "No." And I went for a long time thereafter. If you look into older TNA videos, you'll see me a lot younger, a lot heavier, where I would be there watching all the shows because I was hooked. One of the things I liked as well, too, is because I worked at Universal Orlando, I was allowed to walk around backstage. What I would do is I'd walk around backstage to try to talk to the wrestlers. One of the wrestlers I talked to was Devon Dudley. So I saw him. I said, "Hey, and not understanding that pro wrestling is a work at 18, 19 years old, I talked to him, "Hey, how's it going?" I saw him limping in the back. Maybe he was working me. I don't know. But I happened to talk to him for like 30 seconds, and I was like, this guy was cool. So now I start messing around on the dirt sheets, right? That same guy that introduced me to Impact Wrestling introduced me to the dirt sheets where I would go and I would look at wrestling news. And that's stuff I used to do way back when I was younger, back in 98, 99. That's how I learned that Chris Jericho left WCW and went to WWF at the time. So remember, I was not a wrestling fan. So I wasn't keeping up with any of it, Frank. So he introduced me to this website. I knew that I wanted to be a wrestler at that point. Again, the bug bit me and I was in love. So I started figuring out wrestling schools that I can find. I almost went to, I think it was Tugboat. John Tentes, he had a school in Florida. It was a little bit too far. But I said, you know what? I still want to go to wrestling school. What I did was I started working out. I started getting fit. I got a credit card because there was a lot of money. I had to pay for it. And I found a wrestling school that was a lot closer. It was called FXE. And Devon Dudley was associated with that school. So I remember writing an email, because I was so excited to go to that school. I wonder if I grave dig now in my email. I could wonder if I could still find it. I sent an email to that school, and I never got a reply. I didn't get a reply. So eventually, back on the dirt sheets, I see Team 3D Academy is opening a school with Bubba Ray and Devon Dudley, right? Brother Ray, Bully Ray in Kissimmee, Florida, right next door to Disney. That's only 45 minutes away from my house. So I applied. I applied. I got accepted, and I went into the school. One of the first interactions I had with Bully Ray, and I tell this one a lot because I was such a mark, okay? And I still am. I'm just a little bit more smarter, right? I guess I'm a smart mark. I'm using quotations, but I can't see, right? And he calls me on the phone and go, "Hi, this is Bubba Ray Dudley. And for those of you who don't know or don't know how to use Google, his real name is Mark, right?" So I go, "Hi, Mark." Like we're best friends, right? He introduced himself as
the last thing you want to do with a restaurant.
Yes, he introduced, or you know what, with anybody in particular. If I told you that my name is Mike, my name is Mike. You may know that my name is not Mike. My name is Phil. Okay? Yeah. If I tell you that my name is Mike, my name is Mike. So he introduced himself as Bubba Ray on the telephone, and I said, "Hey, Mark." He goes, "It's Bubba." "Yes, sir, it's Bubba." We're not friends. I've never been to his bar mitzvah. I have never been to any parties or engagements with him where we're friends and we've befriended each other, or we broke bread. I didn't go to college with him. I didn't go to high school with him. I don't know him. He's just a voice on the other end of the phone that used to tell the other guy, "Get the tables."
Yeah.
That's how I ended up in pro wrestling school.
Yeah, and during your time at the Dudley's Academy, what's the most valuable lesson that you think you've learned there?
The most valuable lesson I ever learned at Team 3D Academy, and Team 3D Academy, I always tell people to go there. It's the Harvard of pro wrestling school. No offense to anybody else running a pro wrestling school, but they are one of the Harvards. Bubba runs one in Connecticut, and Devon runs one in Florida. But the biggest thing that they told me, couple things, is it's not who's strongest, it's who's strongest the longest.
Okay.
And the other thing that they told me that I learned that I took away is that when the body says no, the mind has to say go.
Okay.
Those are some of the things that I still walk with. And the last thing that I walk with is, in order to be somebody that you want to be, you got to do something that you've never done before.
Yeah, I see that. You got to push through your limits. That's
correct.
That's something that resonates with me. But the first one that you said, I didn't get it. What does it mean?
So you can be strong, right? You can look strong, right? You can be really strong. You can lift up a whole entire building, right?
Yeah.
But how long can you maintain that for, right? Are you able to run a mile and then lift up that building? Or can you only lift up that building and that's it, you're done for the day until tomorrow? You want to be number 2. You want to have functional muscle. You want to be able to outlast the competition, because strength is nice, right? But can you maintain your strength? Can you be strongest the longest? Because when you're holding that plank, and we used to have planks and other workouts that we used to do, the Dudley Dozen, anybody that went down there at the time, QT Marshall, Serpentico, Leva Bates, all of us had to go through all of that. And when there was no stalling, Coach Dan used to say, no stalling, don't stall him. So like when he was ready, he would break you past that point and make you a better athlete, not only physically, but mentally. And that's one of the things I've always taken away from it.
Okay. And you mentioned Serpentico, Leva Bates, and other names. Did you train together with those people?
So when I was going down to Team 3D Academy in Florida around 2007, 2008, they were obviously way more advanced than me. Like we had Rob Terry down there. We had a lot of other good quality people. Pat Brink, I think his name was, who was with FCW at one time. We all trained together, but they were in the advanced class and I was still in the beginner class. From time to time, they would come out and they would help out with the younger guys and girls, the newer people. And I definitely learned a lot from all of them.
And let's keep it this way. I never do this kind of interviews, but I'm intrigued with your personal story. So then, after you graduated from the Team 3D Academy, I guess you will have your debut match. What recollection do you have of it?
So I didn't get the opportunity to finish Harvard.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get the opportunity to finish Harvard because I was chasing a woman who lived in New York. So I went back to New York. And going back,
it's always like that. It's always the same old story. Yeah,
brother, it started with an apple in a garden. So I went to Florida. I went back to New York. And on the way back to New York, I befriended in my apartment complex. I befriended the neighbor downstairs. His name is Eric Cooper. My roommate said, hey, he's a wrestler. You might enjoy talking to him. So Eric and I befriended each other. And Eric, lo and behold, was from New Jersey. So where I live in New York, I live literally 20 minutes from Jersey, 20 minutes from Pennsylvania, and 40 minutes from Connecticut, right? So I can get to any one of those states really quickly. So I decided to go on the internet on the dirt sheets, and I was like, yeah, I'm going back to New York. I need to find a wrestling school. And Eric goes, I know a wrestling school that you can go to. When I see you, I'll get you the information. Great, no problem. So I'm on the dirt sheets, and I see Nunzio, Little Guido, has teamed up with Body Slam Wrestling Organization in New Jersey. I put in the Google Maps the address to where I'm going to live, to where the school is, and lo and behold, it's only an hour away. I can do that. It's only 15 minutes longer than it would take me to go to Team 3D. So I go telling Eric how excited I am of the news that I learned, and he goes, that's the school that I was going to refer you to. Great. So I ended up coming to New York, and what I did, because I wanted to make sure my heart was all the way into this, and I wanted to hold myself accountable, Frank. And the way I would hold myself accountable is by paying for the entire class up front in a lump sum. When I moved from Florida back to New York, it was premeditated, of course, right? Because I ate the apple, and I had a little bit of money left over, and whatever it is that I had, minus like $300, I gave to Richie Rotten and Nunzio to attend their school. So the way that this school opened, Frank, talking about the accountability, their school was open every single day almost, right?
Okay.
So if I didn't go, or if I did go, I already spent my money, right? So I was not going to waste my money. So I pretty much lived there. I started that school maybe in May of 2009. By July 2009, I had my first match in New Jersey.
Okay, so yeah, it was a pretty intense couple of months.
Yeah.
So, to get there. Well,
yeah,
it's really unprecedented. At least to all the people I had the pleasure to talk to. That's really quick. Well, you must be a fast learner.
Well, I already had a little bit of training, obviously, from going to Team 3D Academy, and all they did was took what I remembered and what I knew and put together with what I needed to learn, and then I was able to go ahead and have that match. That match exists on the internet. It's not a great match. I wouldn't recommend anybody trying to find it because you can't find it. It's there, but it's hidden. That match was terrible. Frank, I shopped that match around for months trying to get booked at other places. Looking at it now, I understood why I never get
why you didn't get any booking.
I wouldn't book me, not with that match. But, from learning different things, from understanding psychology more, learning how to put certain things into the match at certain times, and learning how to extract different reactions from the crowd at certain times, I was able to progress and get bookings more places other than BWO.
Yeah, this is something interesting to me because we now live in an era where basically we have a supercomputer in our pockets, that can do everything and can be also a very much reliable camera to shoot stuff. But like up until 10 years ago, things weren't so reliable. Probably the first smartphones were already there, but you didn't use it exactly the same way we do it now. And even before was even way worse because you had to tape it. So how was for you? Because as you just said, you had to like have a match, shoot, and edit it and produce this kind of stuff. This side of things, how was for you? Did you enjoy doing this kind of stuff? Was it something that came naturally to you, or it's the most boring part about being a wrestler?
Well, you see, for me, the most fun part about being a wrestler is, if see, I'm my own worst critic, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm the host of the Tristen Law Show, and I take my podcast and I edit it and I do everything to it, and then I listen to it just as you listen to it. I listen to you, mine's on Wednesdays and yours on Thursdays. That's what I do. And I critique myself. I'm my own worst critic. So going back to wrestling, I used to carry, I bought a flip camera. I don't know if anybody remembers a flip camera.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yep, I bought a flip camera that was an HD from Amazon. And what I would do is right before I went out, hey, would you mind recording my match for me? They would record my match. I would watch it. I would critique myself. And what I would do is I would upload some of those matches to the internet. That's what I had to do. I had to create content. I wanted to get buzz about myself because I wanted people to be able to Google me. Now, at the time, was I putting out the best content? Maybe not. But you know what? It was something for me to shop around to other people like Danny Doring, Nunzio, and different other people out there in the wrestling community that have more experience than I am to help me grow and become a better performer in the ring.
Yeah, because even in the first days of YouTube, we didn't have like now we do. We know that the title of the video is very important because you have to sell what's inside. At the time, it was probably just like, I don't know, Tristen Law wrestling match. Probably that was just the most accuracy we used to put in those kind of things.
It used to be like something as simple as Tristen Law versus Frank Mandolini. I'm over, of course. But
of course.
That's how it used to be. And that's something that I just recently learned and mastered, even with my podcast, the Tristen Law Show, because I would just put Frank Mandolini, podcaster. But right, that's great. But to some people, that's great. So I had to put some kind of tagline on the end. Like, for example, one of my episodes with Love Jones that you can listen to at tristanlawshow.com and where you find podcasts. I put Love Jones Pro Wrestler. It was getting a lot of listens, but then I put the tagline on it. I think it's the house and the car or something like that. Now, people listening, once you listen to the story, you understand why it's that name. So that's some of the learning that I had to do in order to make people be more enticed to listen. Because, it's there, but why are they going to listen? Let's pull them in and make them listen. So, that's YouTube, and that's content creating, and it's something that has to be learned, because I don't think this is something that they even teach in the college course.
No. And I see a lot of similarities between wrestling and marketing. And since I know that you've been working in sales for many years now, and you know about that side of things, and I think that this kind of time that you spent in that department was really valuable to apply in wrestling, because as you teach me, when you have to sell a move, you use the word sell. That's really, really important. You have to sell something to the audience, right?
Yes.
And with podcasting is the same, and with marketing in general is the same. So there are a whole lot of similarities. And do you find more difficult to do this kind of selling, like in the wrestling world or in the podcasting?
I feel it's tougher to do both, because when I did house, I sell houses now as well too, along with the 1 million other things that I do. I used to sell cell phones. I used to sell lotion to women in the mall, Frank. They hired me because I was a person of color, and I was able to attract the people of color. I would say, hey, beautiful, how are you doing today? Oh, you talking to me? Yeah, I'm talking to you. Hey, how's it going? Hey, would you like to try some lotion? Yeah. So as they would come over, I'd put the lotion in their hand. Hey, you mind if I rub that in for you? And I'd rub it into their hands, and I would look them in the eye, and I would talk to them about the lotion, and at the end, they would buy it. So that's where I gained all my selling from. But it's easier if you ask me to pick up the phone and make a cold call to somebody who doesn't have a relationship with me than with pro wrestling and podcasting, because the content creating and pro wrestling world, it's so noisy. There's so much noise in there, right? Of hundreds, if not thousands, of pro wrestling podcasts. We are ones, if not hundreds of millions of billions of podcasts in the world, and somebody has to come across ours and listen. And we have to make sure that we do it right the first time, because you know what? They may give us a second chance. They may give us a third, but they definitely won't give us a fourth if we can't create good interviews. So I think it's difficult either way.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I'm not really a huge podcast listener. I have to admit that. And other than mine, that I listen to it because I have to edit it,
Right?
because otherwise I don't even listen back to the episode once it's published. And other than mine, I listen probably two other wrestling podcasts. One of which, conveniently, is the Tristen Law Show.
Oh, look at that!
Look at that! Who would have thought that? So, tell me a little bit about your podcast journey, because if, for my understandings, correct me if I'm wrong. Of course, that was that wasn't the idea for you to be a wrestler and a podcaster as well. That was something that came up quite recently, right?
Yeah, so becoming a podcaster is something that I really started doing as we would say in New York City, I started going hard body on that, because it was in the middle of the pandemic and there was nothing to do. So for me, I always wanted to be in broadcast. I always wanted to do drive time radio. I want to be the guy that you listen to on your way to work or on your way back home from work, or depending on when you work, you could be working at night. And that was something I wanted to do because I thought that job was so cool. And the closest that I could ever get to it was podcasting. So I remember sitting at home, this was maybe 2017, and I was talking to my friend Brittany, shout out to Brittany, and I said, hey, I want to be a podcaster. She goes, great. What do you want your podcast to be? And I said, about everything. She goes, that's stupid. Nobody will listen. and you know what? She's right in the grand scheme of things, because you alienate people. People don't have a reason to come back. So you got to find a niche, and you got to carve it out and just work in that little box. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make a podcast about politics. And that was great, because I like politics, but I don't like politics as much as I thought I would. I would have to talk about it. So that ended. So I started doing the radio show, Royal Ramble Radio, and I was taking it and putting it into a podcast and different stuff like that. And then during that time, I was doing a podcast with my cousin who was sex trafficked. And because I thought it was a great story that you can use to help little girls or guys out wherever in the world. And, we did that for a little bit, and then that went to the wayside. So I feel like everything that I've ever done before has led me up to this point. So there was even a time where I didn't even listen to a podcast. I made podcasts, but I didn't listen to them. But then I discovered Conrad Thompson, the pod father. Like you and I always tell you, you're my pod brother. Conrad Thompson is the pod father.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I listened to his podcast, and I was like, it's so funny. Granted, it's a niche that's already there, that it's pro wrestling and everybody has a podcast about it, but theirs is special. So when it came to the Tristen Law Show, I had to figure out how to make mine special. You can listen to any podcast and learn about, somebody's favorite move or, what made him be a wrestler. But for example, I got an episode with Johnny Radke that's coming up where I talk to him about things that are personal to him. And in order to do that, you got to do a lot of research. You got to dig and stuff like that on your person. And because of that, when you listen to my podcast, I'm going to introduce you to not only the personality in the ring, but the personality outside of the ring as well, too. And that's what I try to do every time. And that's my journey to podcasting. And I'm here right in front of you.
How many hours per week do you spend for each episode?
So here's what I do. I will give you my secret. And to anybody out there looking to create a podcast, these are one of the many ways. Right now, I switched the way that I did it. So in August, in July of 2020, I decided I was going to do a podcast, right? I want to be on my own. I want to do my own thing. I can do it. People told me, you can do it. You're talented enough. Just go make your own podcast. So I did it. So what I did was I set up a launch day when I want to do it. But what I did was I created a wish list, whether I knew you or not, whether you were famous or not famous, whatever, whether you were best friend or not, you were on that list. And what I did was I reached out to a bunch of people, and before episode 1 aired, I had maybe 8 interviews already ready to go. So one of the things that they say about podcasting, Frank, is that a lot of podcasts don't last past, 10 episodes? So for me, I was determined to get past that number. So what I did was I batch interviewed, bro. I was doing interviews like every single day, 2 interviews a day. And then I realized by September, I had enough content to get me through till the end of November. So now that worked, and because I took my foot off the gas pedal, when it came time to January, I said, wow, I'm running out of content really quickly. So what I started doing now to make it more easier, because I can't sit here and edit podcast, listen and record podcasts every day, my new thing that I'm doing is I'm doing batch interviewing. So right now, in this month of March, I'm doing interviews for April. And then I'm going to take a couple weeks off, maybe like 2 weeks off. And then I'm going to start doing interviews for the following month after that. I could probably do 2 interviews a day, so I can do a week's worth of interviews in maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. So how many hours do I do for podcasts a day? Golly. So I used to be a stickler. If you listen to my early episodes, there's a lot of people that and ahs. And what I do is I used to go back and delete every single and
Oh, yeah. I've been there as well. Yeah.
And then I started doing some research, and people say just leave it in there. It's a little bit more natural. So I went from spending, 3 hours almost editing an hour worth of podcast down to maybe an hour and 15 minutes, because I listen to every single word. So obviously the interview portion, the meat part of the sandwich, is already done. All I do is I record the monologue before that and after that and sandwich it together. So I can really do an episode now in maybe 2.5 hours, really, with the new schedule that I'm doing. I've shaved off a half an hour off my time. And in that time, it includes creating the art for the podcast, creating the description, and it doesn't even include the marketing, sending it out there for people to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's to me the most fatiguing part, because it's literally the interview. It's the fun part, because you get to know the people, you get to know their stories. I know you have a bunch of stories. I want you to tell them in a bit, and so basically that's the interesting part. Then there is all the editing that, I did the same thing at the beginning. I edited out every single but now it's not like that. And then, oh God, there's the marketing. It kills me every fucking time. Every time. I do that for a living. I'm a copywriter normally, so I know how to write. I know how to publish. I know if I have to do like very basic stuff about designing. Okay, but man, that really kills me every time. And that takes ages to do. Lately, I started to, like, when there is something newsworthy, I started to send out some press releases, and it's terrifying. It's something that takes literally ages, fucking ages.
Right.
So my advice for everyone listening who wants to start a podcast is, don't do that. Don't do it. Absolutely don't.
Just write a book or something.
Yeah. Exactly. There are funniest things to do. No, just kidding. I'm loving it. Tris, I know you have a lot of road stories, and you've told a few of them in your podcast. Do you have something new and shiny for us here that you want to share?
So there's definitely one that I can tell. I want to tell the story of the first time I went on like a wrestling road trip, and it was only from my house, was maybe an hour and a half, was closer down to the Jersey Shore. And Nunzio, who was my trainer. I was his driver. And I wholeheartedly subscribe to that. That if you are a younger wrestler, get in the car with somebody that's more veteran than you, because you'll learn something. Because for me, what I subscribe to these days is I hate to be the smartest person in the room, whether it be wrestling. I want to be the dumbest person in the room. You know why? Because there's a lot of smart people that I can sponge off. So I would drive, and Nunzio goes, "Hey, would you mind picking up my friend Danny?" I said, "Sure, no problem. No problem, sir. I'm going to pick up Danny." So I'm getting down there. He gives me the address. He's on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, Danny, we're getting off the highway right now." Cool, no problem. I get off the highway, and I go to this guy's house, and out he goes, "Oh, here he comes right now." And I look, I go, "Oh, shit, it's Danny effing Doring." So my first road trip, I drove Danny Doring and Nunzio down to the Jersey Shore so that we can do a show. However, because like I told you, even the same story with Dave from Dave Knows Wrestling on YouTube, if you give me an opportunity to leech off of you and suck up information, I'm going to suck up information. So I would ask questions to understand what it would be, what it's like to be in the WWE, what it was like to be in ECW. You know, what are some things that you would do if you can go back and look at it now? One of the advice that Nunzio gave me was, "Kids, save your money." He goes, "Because this isn't guaranteed forever." He told me that he could have bought a house right next door to Rey Mysterio or anybody else that he wanted to, but he decided to buy his condo and pay it off in Rockland County, New York. And that's what he did. And I always said that if I ever made it in any way, shape, or form, whether it be podcasting or pro wrestling, I don't have to go buy a mansion next to Conrad Thompson. You think you think he lives in a mansion? I don't know. But I want to take that advice, and I give that to all the newer kids that I train that come to me for advice. They go, "Hey, what's the biggest advice if I ever make it?" I said, "Save your money." Best advice I got.
Yeah, that's the same thing that Mick Foley says all the time. You know, he is very famous for being really the cheapest wrestler.
Yes.
Like, you know, that's true. Even though I think I don't know if Conrad Thompson has a mansion, but I figure out a pretty large house because he has a lot of collectibles and stuff. So and it's quite enough space to store all the things. And about your in-ring career, what are like some of the most memorable matches that you had, or even like the matches you had against like famous wrestlers, even with Nunzio as well? I don't know.
So having a match with Nunzio, I was never nervous to work with Nunzio in the ring because I knew Nunzio. I know him. I spent a decent amount of time with him at the school, and after the school we would talk, right? So I knew him, and I wasn't intimidated or afraid or shy or anything. I would talk to Nunzio. If Nunzio walked into my house right now, I think that'd be weird because I didn't invite him. But I would, if my friend Nunzio, right, Lil Guido, walked into the house right now, I would talk to him just like I'm talking to you. There'd be no difference. "Hey, Guido, how's it going?" "Oh, Tristen here," you know, whatever, right? But the first time I had to wrestle Jimmy Superfly Snuka, I had to wrestle him in the Bronx. And I realized that's what I started to realize, that it's not about the moves. Nobody cares about the moves. It emotionally invests people with the character and the story, and they will care. Myself and Jimmy Superfly Snuka, we probably only did 4 moves. And it was something as simple as me, you know, talking junk, and then I turned my back, and all of a sudden he's like there behind me. I would powder out the ring, and then when I would try to get in, he would come to the ropes, and I would run back, and I would have to crawl underneath the ring. And then I would peek out my head, and you hear the fans going, "He's over here, he's over here." And then I would try to shush them, and I would crawl back underneath the ring. I'd climb to another side, and then Jimmy Snuka's not looking. And then I climb into the ring, and Jimmy Snuka turns around and sees me. I take a bump on my ass, and then I roll out the ring, and they would cheer for that. And then finally, when he touches me, right, I think he gives me a headbutt, and then I bump. And then he goes up to the middle, to the second rope, because he was very limited at the time. He goes up to the second rope and comes off with the Superfly splash. 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, he's over. You know what I mean? And that's what wrestling was. And that was one of my first times. The second time I got to wrestle Jimmy Superfly Snuka was in MCU Park in Brooklyn, New York. It's where the minor league baseball team plays baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it was me, myself. Obviously, it's me, myself. No, let's try again. It was me, my friend Matt Sachs, the Cheapskate wrestler who was seen on TLC's Extreme Cheapskates, and Damian Darling. We took on Jimmy Superfly and that was the biggest crowd that I've ever been in to date. And a lot of the stuff that I did in that match does not age well at all. I came out with the Confederate flag, and these people. Let me tell you, if you're international, listen to this, and you don't know what the Confederate flag is, Google it. But I understood that I was playing a character just like anybody else would be on TV.
Yeah.
And those people that paid, if they loved the Confederacy and they saw me with the flag, they booed and wanted me to die. Those people that did not like the Confederacy, they booed me and they wanted me to die. So either way, the consensus was, why is this black man walking around with the Confederate flag? So I went out there as the new Freebirds and we did our little thing, and it was over. It was popular. The people did not want us to win at all. Obviously, we didn't win, but I think that's one of my biggest moments in pro wrestling. Me and my friend Matt, we talk about it, that when we were backstage, bro, we felt like we made it. We were trying to sell merchandise, and nobody bought our merchandise because they didn't know who we were.
Yeah.
But if I had to do it now, I'm sure something would probably sell because of the hundreds of thousands of people that listen to the Last Minute Wrestling podcast and the Tristen Law Show, and people that see, me wrestling and living my life on Twitter at The Real Big Trist and Instagram. Follow me.
Yeah, there's no need for me to ask you to plug your channels because you are so good that you already done that. But Tris, one of the things I immediately noticed about you listening to your show is that you are an incredible talker. Is that something that came naturally, or you've been taught to in wrestling school?
No, I technically, before anything, let's go back in the Wayback Machine. If you ever listen to my show, the Tristen Law Show, you know I like Back to the Future, my favorite movie. So we're gonna get back in that DeLorean, and we're gonna get back to like high school. Bro, in high school, I was shy, right? I used to see girls that I'd be so in love with, and I'd be that guy in the back go, oh my God, if you just give me a chance. I would see opportunities out there. I'm not talking about girls, like opportunities in life that I could take advantage of as a teenager, but I was too shy. You gave me a microphone and you told me to get in front of people and talk. I didn't know what to say. So then when I moved down to Florida, I applied for a job at Universal Orlando, right? Universal Orlando, I must say this. If they didn't change the pay structure, I would still be working at Universal Orlando today. Well, then I moved to New York for a girl, but that's neither here nor there. But I just loved the job. I was on the reason why I loved the job is because I was a part of somebody's vacation every single day.
Okay.
And the job that I applied for was a gameskeeper. So I thought I'd be working in an arcade. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could stay to myself. I make change. I troubleshoot the machines. And then I go about my day, right? And then I'm done. I get a free discount to go into Universal. So I get the job. I'm in orientation. And then they go, let me show you where you work. Great. I look, it's carnival games. Wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this. Wait, I didn't sign up for any of this. I worked at Amity Games right outside of Jaws in Universal Orlando. So one of the things that I had to do was I had to compel people to come on over and deliver me at least $3 to play the game. And the game that was the center of attention was Whack-A-Mole. So I became so good at getting people to come over that they would put me and my friend Chris in Whack-A-Mole, and they had another game where you would guess people's age, weight, or birth month. I would be the Amazing Alonzo. And those would be the games that they put you in. Like thinking about it now, I would be like, hello, everybody, welcome. And I am the Amazing Alonzo, and I'm here to guess your age, your weight, or your birth month. And guess what? If I'm wrong, you're going to go ahead and get a prize. Hey, sir, why don't you come on over here and let me guess how old you are? Or somebody walk by, I'll be like, hey, it looks like you're 21. And they're like, oh, I'm not 21. Well, if you pay $3, I guess you got a prize. Okay, there you go. Boom. And that's how I would do it, right? So It became my job to talk. Now, Frank, if you said, hey, I need you to go to Universal Orlando and speak in front of millions of people, hey, give me the microphone. I'm ready to go. So I'm not self-taught. I mean, I'm not professionally taught. I just learned to not be shy. Picture everybody in their underwear and just talk. Read the crowd. I learned how to put it back into wrestling terms. I learned how to work the room. You know, one of the things I learned is that when you tell a joke or you say something funny and people are laughing, don't try to talk over them. Let the laugh go ahead. And once the laugh dies down, then you put inflection in my voice. And I learned to be excited for people because I was a small part of their massive vacation that they spend lots of money on.
You took every opportunity you had in front of you. Do you ever realize that without that job at Universal, you wouldn't be into wrestling because of the friend you had that brought you to the TNA tapings? You wouldn't be probably the talker that you are right now, which is, as I said, you're an amazing talker. And that's so fucking serendipitous. It's incredible how the streets of life leads us. I'm always amazed about it. And I'm amazed that I got to know you, Tris, that we got to share a huge chunk of the road of our podcasting growth together so far. It's a great pleasure to listen to the Tristen Law Show every Wednesday. And if you listen to the Last Minute Wrestling podcast, you perhaps have heard the suave voice of Tristen Law plugging his show. Tris, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been amazing, and we should do it sometime soon again.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to have you on my podcast because we're going to do the WrestleMania. We're going to be talking about the top 5 WrestleManias of the last 10 years. And I'm excited to have you, Dave Lee from Dave Knows Wrestling, and Stephen James, the voice of Catalyst Wrestling. We're going to be talking about wrestling. And of course, I'm going to get you on for a one-on-one.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Can't wait for it. Tris, thank you so much, really. Thank you so much. I'll be waiting for you to wrestle in Italy because I want you to have your debut in Italy as soon as we are allowed to travel again. So well, let's see where these things are going. Okay.
Hey, I'm down. I can't wait to come to Italy and entertain the people with my bad American antics. And I can't wait to see you in person so you can show me what real pizza tastes like.
Oh, yeah. I can talk about it for ages. Italian people are like that. We like to talk about food and to brag about food. Well, Tristen Law, thank you so much for coming on to the Last Minute Wrestling podcast. Ciao.
Later.